All right, we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of True Say with CBJ. And I am your host, Cherno. And I have a very special guest today, all the way from Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Fatima Tambajang. Welcome, Fatima. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy, like I said, that we finally made it. We had tried 3 times.
Yeah.
So super excited to learn more about why you're doing this podcast. I had the episode with Saini.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think I would learn so much from a 20-year-old, but I really did. So I'm really excited.
True. I'm honored to have you in the podcast because, for people who don't know, we're actually family as well, but we never really grew up around each other. So I never really get to connect with you and get to know you a lot. I've only kind of see what you've been doing with your career so far. So I kind of wanted to take this opportunity to kind of talk with you, get to know what you do, and get to kind of know how, like, who you are, overall. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to have this conversation, So I'm really honored for you to take your time because I know you're very busy as well.
Oh no, anytime.
Nah, you don't have to be shy about it. It's all right. But for people who don't know, can you just please give a little bit of introduction about yourself and what do you do?
Sure. So yeah, as you know, my name is Fatima, and I think, talking about where I come from is super important because it's always influenced what I've studied and the work that I do. So I was born in Denmark. I went back to Gambia when I was 10. And then I lived in Gambia from 10 to 13. And that played a formative role in my life, right? I think I saw Africa differently because the way that I saw Africa growing up was like flies on the bellies and all that kind of stuff. And when I went to Gambia, I went to Marina. It was like completely different. I keep telling people the first time I had like Kool-Aid or Oreos was in Gambia.
Seriously?
And not Europe, right? I mean, you live in Sweden now, right? So you get to see that we don't really have American products the way that they have in Gambia. But yeah, so Gambian through and through. And then I lived in the UK. So I did high school in the UK, university in the UK. And then I was doing my master's in Denmark. And while doing my master's in Denmark, we had to do like an internship abroad. I was supposed to go to Kenya, but they had the terrorist attack back in 2015. So my second choice became Ghana. What was supposed to be 6 months has turned into almost 8 years.
Wow.
Of living in Ghana and working in tech, essentially.
That's lovely. I mean, you had a very interesting life, like, because I watch your TikToks, by the way. I see you on TikTok. I think, I don't use TikTok a lot, but I think you're like one of the few friends that I have. And I see, so when I'm scrolling all the time, I see your post most of the time. And, you seem like, even though it's been like, we've been kind of distant, but I've seen that you're working hard, but at the same time, you're really traveling all the time and you're enjoying life and everything. And I just kind of wanted to get into that a little bit because, you've been, like you said, you've been in Ghana for like about almost 6, like, is it 6 years now, right? So,
8 years.
Yeah, 8 years. Wow. And you've been kind of going through this journey in Africa, coming from Denmark and Scandinavia. How has that journey been in Africa? Like, how would you sum that up, like the journey through Africa, just kind of with traveling and work and just enjoying life overall?
I think it's been humbling, right? I think there's an assumption that for the diasporans that we're coming to give back.
Okay.
And it's usually never that way. That wasn't my story, right? I think the continent kind of gave back to me and it humbled me a lot. You always think that, okay, this is how it's supposed to work. It works in the West like this. It doesn't work like that, right? So I think the first few years was a bit difficult to kind of settle in because you're constantly resisting how things work. So like, let's say lateness. You just have to factor it in. People are going to be 15 minutes late. Don't freak out. It happens.
Yeah.
So things like that has been super interesting. I think it forces you to live outside of your comfort zone. And I think when you live outside of your comfort zone, you're able to reach newer heights and figure out your potential to the exponential level. I mean, you live in Scandinavia, so you understand it's very comfortable.
Yeah.
In the Nordic countries, you get paid to go to school, everything works. So you become a bit complacent, in my case anyway. Whereas I think on the continent, you can't afford to do that. You really have to work harder, I guess, go home.
Yeah, I mean, it's really different here. I've been here think about it. Oh my God, it's going almost 3 years now.
Oh, wow.
And I've never been like, I went to America for a while. I lived in Saudi, being in Gambia, grew up in Senegal. But all my experiences, like when I moved here, it's one of the most biggest cultural differences that I've ever experienced in my life. Even with just I'm married to a sweet Gambian, but even the differences, the way they think here, the way the system works here, it's just like a hamster wheel. Like it's very difficult to adapt to. And moving here while I was like 28, it was kind of like almost like the moment where I'm really trying to figure out my life and what I really want to do. So. But I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I think it's just a place where you come and you plan, and then you kind of just go back home, I guess, because it's really hard to see myself kind of just to be here for the rest of my life is really difficult. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so you said you moved to Ghana because of the war in Kenya, but like why Ghana? Because a lot of people, when they work or they live abroad, either they go back to Gambia, or if they're from Senegal, they go back to Senegal. Like, why Ghana? What kind of attracted you there?
So like I said, I was literally supposed to be here for 6 months. And when I first came to Ghana as well, I lived in the northern part, which is called Tamale. So Tamale is like 12 hours by road away from Accra. So it's very, very different from Accra. It's underdeveloped. You have a lot of Hausa people and Fulani people. So it was different. I was in the development world, right? I think for Gambians, the time I was growing up anyways, we always saw the UN as the end all be all when it came to markets of success. So I was on that track. And I think 6 months after being there, I realized that, development, it's a vehicle for Africa, but it's not the only way. So when I came back to Accra, literally as I was getting ready to go back to Denmark, my friend was like, oh, hey, my friend is looking for someone to work in operations with her. And then I got a job that way. And then from there, I was like, okay, the private sector, a lot more is happening in that side than it is in the public sector.
True. Then
I worked in tech, and then I think tech opened my world. And then I was just like, okay, let me see what I can do here. 1 year became 2, 2 became 3, 3 became 4. And then at that time as well, when I was in tech, at the time, it was still relatively new, right? So the Googles were coming into town. Amazon was coming into town.
Yeah. So you said, because I think we had a little bit of a connection problem there, but you said Google and Amazon's and all of them were coming in. What do you mean coming in? Like, can you explain that for me?
Sorry, say that again.
You said, we're having connection problem, but it's okay. You said the Amazons and the Googles were coming in at the time. Like, you mean coming into base there, or like, how do you mean exactly?
I'm so sorry. I think I missed you, but you said that. I think what you said was the Amazons and the Googles were coming in.
Yeah.
In what capacity? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'll start with Microsoft, right? So Microsoft, I think it was maybe 2016, 17, they were hiring a lot of developers and taking them from Ghana to the US. Google, for example, I specifically work in artificial intelligence.
Okay.
And Google set up their AI office for Africa in Ghana. So I got to realize that Twitter as well, their headquarters before it got shut down was in Ghana.
Wow.
Yes. So I think a lot of people just didn't realize it. But like I said, if you want to come into Africa, Ghana is considered an easy entry point outside of Kenya and South Africa. So I was like, I've been here for so long. I already understand the local nuances. It would be a waste of time to leave. Now that I understand the ecosystem, I want to plug myself in to what's happening. And that's why, I kept staying. But it was a gamble, right? It could have gone either way. Yeah,
you take a risk. But I never knew, like, Twitter had a headquarters there in Ghana. Wow.
Africa.
Wow. That's really interesting. I never really knew that. I never knew that. But yeah, you're talking about artificial intelligence. And in my knowledge, you studied global economics. So you never had any educational background in tech. That's one of the things that was really, when I heard that, I was like, wow, like she has guts. You know what I mean? Because, you made this switch and you got into AI. What actually inspired you or attracted you to really wanted to get into AI?
I would say it happened by accident of sort, right? So like I said, I studied development. And then after I studied development, I'm like, okay, what is actually developing the continent? It was tech. And then I was working for a fintech specifically. So I studied within development remittances. So basically sending money from the West to the global South.
Yeah.
And then this fintech, they had a chatbot. So they had like a little machine that would help their customers speak, and it was powered by artificial intelligence. My job was to make like the general population understand what artificial intelligence was. And it was also to sell the chatbot that we were creating to the likes of MTN, Airtel, EcoBank, and so forth. So that's how I kind of got into AI. And then I got out of AI, and then I came back into AI again. But that's essentially it. And I'm sure, as you know now, there's a lot of buzz around AI, ChatGPT, and so forth. Oh my God. So, yeah, it's been exciting.
It's been well, I would say it's kind of been, these two sides. It's either people are like freaking out about it, or they're really excited about it. And I'm kind of in the middle of both, because like the time I heard about artificial intelligence is when I watched in movies and stuff, and which is a robot who looks very like human-like or whatever, and you have this, there's this idea of they're gonna become basically our destruction or whatever. But the more I kind of get to know what artificial intelligence can do, or what is it really about, and I realize it could actually be beneficial for certain things, like which is you saying, which is the chatbots and all these things. But like, where do you stand in that? Like, how do you really see artificial intelligence doing? Like, what can it really do for us in the future? Like for the society, like as a whole.
No, and I think your comment about being in the middle and the dangers of it, but the potentials of it, it's super important to point out. But I always tell people when it comes to AI, it's almost like social media, right? Social media is a double-edged sword. You can use it, become an influencer, market your business, do thought leadership. I mean, you're promoting your work on Twitter, or you can also use it, become a troll, instigate hate crime, and so forth. So I think with AI, it's really the same, right? So you can use it for destruction, and you can also use it for great use cases. So in the work that I do day in, day out, I work with over 43 artificial intelligence communities in Africa. And I will work with about 240 startups. And I work with several universities. So you get to see what AI does. So just on, when was it? I think the day that we were supposed to speak originally, I was at the University of Ghana, because I was working with some of their students. And they're using artificial intelligence to be able to detect erratic behavior from a camera, from a CCTV camera. So how can you tell when a human is being erratic, and how can you almost signal that to the security? So that's maybe a use case, right? Another use case in Africa is genomics. So when we're looking at sickle cell, that's a disease that affects Black and brown people more than it does white people. And artificial intelligence is being used to predict, okay, what are the genomic sequencing and so forth. I think another way artificial intelligence is being used that I find interesting here is languages, right? So you can translate from French to English, but can you translate from French to Wolof, from Wolof to Mandinka?
True.
Probably not. But there are people on the continent who are doing local languages and translating them. So there's so many different use cases. I think there's so many, and it's almost our imagination is what has to be stretched to figure out how can it be used.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of things obviously created with artificial intelligence, but I think the part where I get scared is like, how much will be enough? Like, will there ever be a control? Like, how do we ensure that these technologies are going to be used in a very, very safe way, or a very equitable way? You know what I mean? Like the thing where you talk about with the camera, with the security camera thing, I think that's awesome. You know what I mean? If somebody's going to come steal in my house, passing around to look around, that to capture their behavior, to know what's going to happen before it happens, I think those things are useful. But it gets scary when, things like ChatGPT, the things it can do, once it develops to become, 4.0 or 5.0, and it just keeps going, like how scary can it get, can it get, And I know I'm only talking about the negative sides of it.
No, but I think it's fair. I think, like I said, when social media came out, it was the same thing, right? When Facebook came out, it was like, oh my God, people are going to be glued on their phone, data privacy laws, so many things. And those conversations still continue. And I think it is important to have those conversations so that the tools can be commercialized. I mean, we still don't have social media laws. I don't know whether you've been seeing what's happening with TikTok, right? The states is trying to regulate it. So I think these conversations are going to be had, but there's two things. As Black people specifically, we either become spectators or we join what's happening and we influence it, right? So when it comes to AI can be biased in the sense of, at the end of the day, it's a human being who's putting in the information and that's being sped out by the machine. If we don't have Black and brown people being part of that supply chain, we're not going to see ourselves reflect. I mean, there's so many cases where artificial intelligence doesn't recognize Black people.
Yeah, I heard about that. I think I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast. I didn't know exactly what they were talking about. It mentioned something about, can it be racist? Like things like that, because it depends on who is coding that.
Exactly.
And it's something very, very, very interesting to think about. That's really true. Now that's scary.
Yeah, it can be racist, right? So that's why, like I said again, it's important that we're part of the process. We're part of developing it. We understand the tools that are being created. We influence it and so forth. Otherwise, we're just going to be consumers or not necessarily creators. And I think that's why I really enjoy what I do. I get to work with developers and students and builders of the AI tools that we're consuming. Yeah.
So one of the reasons you think, because you're in Ghana as well working, do you think Africa has kind of been behind a lot, like with artificial intelligence, like with the thing you're saying about the coding, the person who's coding it, like for Black people to get in there, like how far behind are we when it comes to artificial intelligence, like, or how far have we've achieved, at least I would say,
Okay. I think, looking at how far we've achieved is probably a better way to look at this question rather than how far away are we. Because artificial intelligence in general, globally, it's still a very, very niche area of technology.
Okay.
And I think when it comes to technology, people like to assume that the continent is behind, and it's not, right? You live in Sweden, you use mobile money, I'm sure, right? In Denmark as well, mobile money is quite big. It's not as big as places as like the UK or the US. I think they're now catching up, but mobile money is huge in Scandinavia. Mobile money started in Kenya in 2006.
Where is that a money transfer app or something?
Yes. No, the idea of money transfer. So like, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, Western Union or whatever. Yeah.
Something along those lines, right? But like mobile money specifically started in Kenya. And I think when it comes to AI, like I said, Google AI has a headquarters in Africa. That goes to show you that research is coming out of here. Tunisia specifically, they have more than 12,000 developers within artificial intelligence. And recently, a Tunisian company called InstaDeep got acquired for $600 million.
Yeah, I read that today, actually.
Really?
When I was doing my research, yeah.
Yeah. So every single day you see things, right? There's a report recently that published that there are over 2,400 artificial intelligence organizations in Africa. You have artificial intelligence strategies being developed by African government, Rwanda, Ghana. In Senegal, for example, they're using artificial intelligence in their CCTV surveillance of the country. So I do think we've made a lot of strides. I think it's just not been publicized, or people just don't know all the puzzles that are happening.
Yeah, because like I honestly, everything I've heard about artificial intelligence has been from, like the Western world. Like I have not heard anything about AI in Africa until I wanted to talk to you. That's when I started doing my research. And then I saw this thing about Tunisia and all these things. I'm like, wow. Then I really started getting into AI in Africa, and I saw a lot of things. And it made me really, really proud that we're going that way, because I think it can be beneficial for us, not only even with the mobile monies and all these things, but even in medicine, even in, because I know there's a lot of other issues that we have that I think artificial intelligence can solve it. You know what I mean? So I think that's a good thing. And I just want to get into, because now the fact that you've made this switch, like you must have maybe faced some challenges while you were having this change, the transition in tech. And have you had any challenges while you were transitioning? And if you do, how did you like overcome them?
Yeah, I don't know. I think when it comes to my career, I'm very comfortable with challenge, right? As long as I'm not challenged, I typically get bored. So I think the way that I look at it, or what I've learned, is skill is more important than knowledge, in the sense of if you have the skill or the attitude of being, let's say, you can absorb knowledge pretty quickly and you can spot your weaknesses, then I don't see it as a challenge. It's just an opportunity to grow. That's I never saw it as a challenge. I just saw that, oh my God, I know nothing. So I have so much space to grow. And the way that I bridged it is I spoke to developers. I sat next to the techies and I tried to understand. I tried to go back to school online by doing simple courses on how to code and so forth. And I still think I have 80% to go, right? Like I'm literally just scratching the surface. So, you kind of take peace in knowing that you don't know anything, but then you're also excited by the fact that there's so much that you need to know. I think what is more challenging on the continent is necessarily how to find opportunities, because it's not straightforward like it is in Europe, where you apply for a job, you cross your fingers and you get it.
Yeah.
Here, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I mean, it's everywhere in general, but on the continent is even more intensified, right? So, I mean, if you've seen my stuff on TikTok, you would know I talk a lot about LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I'm like the LinkedIn queen. Every day, LinkedIn. And it's funny because I think like last year I went to some tech dinner and there was a lady who was sat next to me. She was from New York and she worked at LinkedIn. So I was like, oh my God, like I love LinkedIn. And she's like, oh, we'd love for you to become an ambassador. So I started doing work with LinkedIn as well. But I keep saying like LinkedIn has almost democratized opportunities. Like you don't need to know anybody. All you need to know is how to write a good profile, how to position yourself for opportunity. So I think that was a challenge when I first came into tech. The challenge was assuming that doing a job application the regular way is what's going to get you the opportunity.
That's really interesting. And the fact that you love these challenges, I think, makes you more human, because I feel like as a human being, we're made to face challenges. We're made to have a lot of tribulations and all these things, and that's how we grow. That's how we evolve, by putting ourselves into places or into things that will challenge us, what I mean, and take risk. That's how we grow. That's how we evolve. And you seem like a very self-disciplined person. Like how would you describe what self-discipline is, or like how would you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I keep telling people, right? I mean, if you know my mom, you know that I am my mother's daughter, right? So I'm very similar to my mom. My mom has OCD in the sense of everything is clean, everything is color coordinated.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what it was, but I saw a quote somewhere. It's almost like, oh yeah, discipline is better than willpower, or structure is better than discipline. So I wouldn't necessarily say I'm disciplined. I would just say that I have structure, right? So I love sugar. I love chocolate. Like with all of my heart, right? When I go to Denmark and I come back to Ghana, it's food that I'm putting in my hand luggage. It's not clothes, but it's food, right? And I'm constantly trying to like monitor my weight, not because of like vanity metrics, but I feel better when like my gut health is better. I mean, your gut is like your second brain. So if I had chocolate in my fridge, I would eat it. If I don't have chocolate in my fridge, I can't eat it.
Sure.
So that's so it's not really led by discipline, it's really led by structure.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily always like it, right? Or it's almost like if I leave my phone outside of my bedroom and my book is next to my bed, unfortunately I have to read that book. I probably don't want to. I'd rather sit on Twitter and just be scrolling for infinity. So I think that's how I work around the whole discipline thing. And I think it's like you constantly have to nurture it. I wish I had a straightforward answer, but I don't. I haven't been to the gym 2 days in a week. Well, I usually go to the gym 4 to 6 days a week. I haven't been for the past 2 days.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go after this podcast.
Exactly.
I managed to get 3 days a week. I think we're a little bit similar because like, I tell my wife when I'm trying to get on a diet, like don't buy cookies, or if I ask for one cookie, bring me one cookie, don't bring me the whole package, because I don't have the discipline not to eat it. Like I have this problem with bread because I'm a fuller. So, we love our bread. And I've been trying to have a low carb diet. It's been like the hardest thing. And she looks at me like I'm very disciplined. But now that you say it, it's kind of more like structured, because if I see it and if it's in the house, I'm probably going to eat it. You know what I mean? But if it's not there, I'm not going to bother. So yeah. So, yeah. And I want to ask, like, cause like you said, you living in Ghana, you're working, but you're having a lot of fun as well. How do you find a balance and to prioritize between work and fun? Like, how do you do both to make sure that you're on track, that you don't do one too much and you don't do the other too much?
Yeah. I think it's seasons, right? And it's almost like priorities in your life. Like, so I think typically at the start of the year, I'm pretty quiet. I don't really see many people. I'm home a lot because you want to make sure that the first quarter, you're kind of using it to set the foundation. And then once I feel a little bit more comfortable, then I'll go out. But in general, I'm naturally very extroverted. So I'm a people person, but I'm also a grandma. Like I wish I could stay up past 10, 11, but typically it is pretty hard. Like when I went to university in the UK, we have something called Freshers Week, which is the week where you party every single day for 1 week. I didn't do Freshers Week. Like I had no interest in doing Freshers Week. It just wasn't interesting to me. Like I went hiking and I went to nature and so forth. So that's typically what I do. And I also find that if I'm not connected into other things, I can't work with me. So I have to find the time to do the downtown. It's almost like it's non-negotiable. Every weekend, I have to do something that I really enjoy because what's the point in working so hard if you're also not enjoying the ride?
Does your job gives you that freedom as well to be able to live like that? Or do you just like, are you like you're always busy, or like do you have like, you have that kind of freedom, to be able to travel or to do what you want and all these things?
I think it's been a mix. I'd say early on in my career, I didn't necessarily have that much flexibility, but I mean, I would go to the gym before work. And again, it's the whole thing on like structuring your life. Like if I literally have to pack my gym kit the night before, then I would do that. And for me, going to the gym has always been a thing of like fun. It's a point of socialization. I do spinning classes. It's just a good time. And I think later on in my career, like pre-COVID, I would say like around maybe 2019, 2020, I got the flexibility, right? But I also think with more flexibility comes more responsibility, because if they're leaving you to do your work however you want to do it, you also need to give the results. So I am lucky, alhamdulillah, to like really not, be micromanaged or have the regular 9 to 5. I can really structure my day the way I see fit. I still typically have to work American hours because I work with an American company. But for the most part, I mean, look at the calendar and the meetings that you have them, and then you just work your day around it.
Wow. Amazing. I'm inspired. I'm inspired. And I want to just take it back, all the way back to the beginning, when you were younger, like how was your upbringing like? Because of course, like I said in the beginning, we didn't really grow up around each other. And I never really, I was in Senegal, you guys lived in Denmark, but you were born there with Gambian parents. So how was it like living there? How was it growing up around your parents and being in Denmark and all that? Can you just share that a little bit?
I think, I always have bittersweet memories when I think about Denmark. I think growing up, I mean, it's like the typical thing, right? Being the only Black person in class and X, Y, and Z. So I think I faced that a lot. Like, so growing up, it was always like questions like, why is your hair like that? Or do you guys live in zoos? And it was it was just like a lot, right? And I think had I not gone to Gambia when I was 10 to 13, I would have been a completely different person.
True.
And I think had I not had a mom who was very confident, assured in herself, I also would have been a different person, right? So I think, being Black in Scandinavian countries is very weird. Like the first time I had Black friends outside of the Gambia was when I went to the UK. That was the first time I saw a lot of Black people. Like growing up, I didn't see that many Black people in Denmark. I mean, you saw the Gambian community, but you don't really go to school with them. So I always was like, something about this place wasn't for me. I always knew that I didn't see myself living in Denmark. I was like post-university, I was like, nah, I'm not living here. I'm either going to the UK, I'm going to the States, or I'm going back to the continent. And
Yeah. So, and growing up with your mom as well, did she always kind of, guide you to become the woman you are right now? Like, how did you get where you are right now? Like, since you were a kid as well? Were you very structured with your education? Were you like disciplined with your education and all that? Or you didn't really, like how were you basically at that time?
I think, my parents did the best that they could, right? I was the first one to go to university out of my parents. So they only know so much, right? Like my dad will take me to Arabic school. My mom will try and do her best. Like, okay, going to school wise, you always looked great. Like, you know, you always had amazing lunch boxes. But I think in terms of understanding the Nordic system was very different, right? I always say that for any Black person that goes to Europe, if it's not the UK or let's say America or Canada, you have a different set of challenges. You already have the challenge of learning the language, right? Then you have the challenge of figuring out the system. And I don't think my parents knew exactly how to figure out the system. I think what my mom especially had was fit, right? So for the non-speaking one of people, it's like confidence. And I think I always took that from my mother. And she was always like, rain or shine, you'll figure out a way. So I think that's what really stood out to me. So I go back again to say, in my career, what has pushed me or propelled me has been like the willingness to take risk as opposed to what do I know on book and paper, because I'll always be able to learn. If I have the confidence, and I know I'll be able to learn it. But if I've learned the information, but I don't have the confidence to apply it, then I lose, right? But I think that was really it. I really had to just hack the system, try and figure out things myself. I was always involved in extracurricular activities. So when I was in school, for example, I would do electives at a business school to always try and get as much as possible, because everything is free in Denmark. So why not grab everything?
That's actually one of the best things in the kind of the Scandinavian country. Like me being here right now that never really went to school because I went to Dara. I am trying to get into that, you know, to at least to, you know, to get a degree here because I know it's free. So I'm like, I might as well just keep pushing. But it is very difficult to learn the language and to really understand how the system works and just understand how the people work. But, you know, I'm kind of just crossing my fingers, you know, do my leaning to God and work hard. You know what I mean? Because for me as well, I've made the switch for the last 2 years, you know, being married and being a father now. I've kind of would say came back to life because since my brother passed in 2012, I've just kind of been lost. Didn't really know who I was or where I belong or what my purpose was. Even though I went to learn the Quran, you know, like you learn the Quran and people think you figured it out or you were the wonder kid, but you don't even know what I didn't even know what I memorized, you know, so I never had that guidance. And so I was just kind of wandering around, you know, and thank God, like the last 2 years has been very important and very changed. Like I've kind of been on a spiritual journey, I would say, you know, but that as well, it means that I've been kind of surrounding myself with very good companion and good people around me. And to you, like, how important is having very good people or friends and companionship around you?
You know, I was speaking to a friend of mine this morning. She's also Gambian and she lives in Ghana, and she also went to Marina. So we were never classmates, but it's nice to always have, you know, familiar faces. There are a few Gambians here actually, specifically from the school that I went to when I was in Gambia, which is handy. But we were having the same kind of conversation about the people around you need to add life to you and they need to inspire you and they need to challenge. Otherwise, what's the point? And I think when you come to a country where you don't know anyone, friendships, you take them a lot more serious. They're not just friends, right? They're my sisters and they're my brothers. I've had friends who live in Ghana. When they go to Gambia, they stay at my house in Gambia. They've met my grandparents. My mom came to Ghana for the first time last year in September.
Nice.
And when she came, you know, she met all of my friends that she'd been hearing about forever. Every single birthday that I've had in Ghana for the past 6-7 years is the same people in the room, right? So I think I do take that very seriously because, again, it's not my country. So they know the country better than I do. So you lean on your friends more intensely than you do in your home countries. But yeah, how is it in Sweden for you? Because I guess you would also have the similar thing, right? Now that you're building your own community, you will probably put more energy as opposed to in Gambia, because in Gambia, you have an inbuilt community. You come from a big family. You don't really need to build it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting for me because, like I said, that this spiritual journey that I've kind of been going through, because like I've had to lose a lot of friends because they weren't just, we were not very relatable anymore. You know what I mean? And I had to change because there was a lot of toxic things that was involved. So coming here, I kind of had that mentality. I don't need anybody around me. I don't want anybody. I only want my wife, and I want to be around my wife because she's the only one that was kind of my anchor, you know, because, you know, there's a saying that when a person finds God, you know, and you understand who God is, the second thing you should do is find a very good, you know, a good partner, because, you know, having a good partner is either going to bring life back to you or is probably going to give you a headache. You know what I mean? So it's very good to choose wisely, I would say. And so being here, I've kind of just been, you know, grabbing onto that, but I've, you know, kind of tried to free up a little bit and kind of just try to relax and meet new people. And actually one of my close friends, you know, his name is Musa. I think I've interviewed him 2 times in the podcast now. You know, he has been one of the main reason why I'm actually even doing this podcast, because I've been just so inspired around him. He's giving me life back. You know, he's showing me what a real brother is supposed to be, you know, and I'm trying to learn that, because when my brother passed, I didn't even really have any friends. So, you know, so it was like a lot of almost like a trauma. I've gotten to meet people and then fall into the bad toxic, you know, things. And so it was never really that kind of friendship that, like you said, a brother, the sister, you know, at least I thought it was, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, but I'm kind of learning, and I'm kind of, you know, trying to understand people more and learn more. And this is one of the paths. This is one of my journeys on kind of just talking to people like you to get to know how you think and how, you know, how you've, you know, how your life been, so I can learn and I can take some and maybe take some from another person. And, you know, I think it's just important to gain knowledge and just to learn, you know, overall, wherever you are. Yeah, that's cool.
Speaking of learning, I don't know how it works in Sweden, but in Denmark, for example, they have so many degrees in English, right? So if that's something that you really want to consider, you can just consider doing a degree in Sweden in English. So that's what I did. My program was in Denmark, but it was in English, and half of the class were actually Danes, because at the end of the day, you know, English is also now becoming a very powerful language, even within the Nordics region. A lot of business is done in English. So
yeah, true. I thought about that because I like the language. Language is crazy. How's your Danish, by the way? You speak proper Danish still? Okay.
I wouldn't say I speak as well as my siblings. I think my youngest, Musa, my youngest brother, speaks Danish, probably the most fluent, Aisha, and then myself. But I mean, I still, you know, it was the first language that I learned. Yeah. So he's very, very introverted compared to myself and my sister.
Yeah. And anyway, so I just want to just get back to it a little bit. Now you went through this journey, and I know you've from Denmark. You said you lived in London as well, right? Now
Manchester specifically.
Manchester, okay. And was there any pivotal like moment in your life that you kind of realized, or that you wanted to have a global impact or an impact and to change the world, whether it was in Ghana or anywhere else? Like, was there a moment in your life where you're like, I gotta do this, or this has to happen, or this has to change?
I think it was probably Gambia, like I said, because when I came to Gambia, I was 10 to 13. You know, everything was a bubble. Everything was amazing. Like, yes, I mean, I had experiences that, you know, that I wasn't necessarily fond of. But in general, I just think Gambia exposed me to so much, and it changed the way that I saw the continent. I remember the first time I came to Gambia, I wish I was exaggerating. I walked around with no shoes. I was like, this is what I saw on TV. Yeah. So when I came and I was like, that's not the reality. I remember whenever I went back to Europe or to the West, I was like, however you guys represent Africa, that's not the Africa. And that almost became the mission, right? To almost always showcase what's actually happening on the continent. People will be like, you guys live on trees. I'm like, I have no idea what Africa you're talking about. I have a better life. I had a better life in Gambia than I do here. So I think that's when I knew that, okay, I want to go into anything relating to Africa. So my A-levels, I studied sociology and English and media studies. So the idea was to maybe go into journalism within Africa. Then my degrees, again, it was focused on all things Africa. So that's always been my, I guess, operation memorandum.
Yeah. And for people who are listening who like haven't really traveled a lot, like how do you think we can like improve our understanding of like other people's cultures? Like how do you think we can improve that?
I think it's going in open-minded and being able to understand that you're going to learn, not necessarily give back, right? So even in Gambia, sometimes the dynamic between semesters, which essentially means like, people that come back home from the diaspora versus the locals. You can kind of sense that there's a dynamic of we came, we arrived, we know things, blah, blah, blah. That's not the case. I mean, they live there. And if they can live there and they can survive it, and you clearly have to go out, there's something that you can learn from them being able to survive living in Africa, because it's not for the faint of hearts, right? It's really not for the faint of heart. I've had the opportunity to go to over 10 African countries, and they're all different and they all have their different nuances. But I learn when I just go in and I just listen and I observe and I ask. Yeah. And I figure out what are the problems that you guys have and how can I help enable it through the work that I do.
Yeah. And you've basically like worked and lived in like many countries now. How has this global exposure influenced you like in work and your approach? Yeah, basically like your approach to work and life. Like, because I guess traveling a lot must have you've had a lot of experience basically, which is meeting a lot of different people, doing a lot of different things. Like, how has that exposure like influenced your worldview?
I think you realize that more or less we're all really the same people, right? Like, I can speak specifically for Africa, whether it's South Africa or Kenya or Egypt or Nigeria, we're more or less the same people. And I also think, the ability to just blend in everywhere. I mean, if you go to Egypt, then it's like, you throw in the 1-2 Arabic that which is like Assalamu alaikum and swai and habibi. If you're in Nigeria, then, it's more extroverted and you can be loud and big as possible. If you're in South Africa, I can pass for a South African looking person. If I'm in Kenya, it's just literally how malleable are you? And I think that's like, people do business with people and not products, right? So if I go in and I'm like, oh, I do X, Y, and Z, I work for this company, no one really cares. But if you go in and you're super duper relatable, then business is easy to do. And that's what I've really learned, right? I've been to Ukraine. I think I went to Ukraine 2016, and I remember I was super scared to go. I was like, oh my God, these guys are going to be racist, X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And when I went, it was the opposite. They were super duper hospitable. So like I said, it just kind of goes in with being open-minded and trying to be as human as possible. We all bleed red at the end of the day.
So do you have a favorite so far? I know you're living in Ghana, but maybe apart from, do you have a favorite country that you've I would like to go back there? Or maybe,
I mean, I'll probably be very biased and say Gambia, right? So I think in Ghana, believe it or not, like my nickname is like the Gambia. And I always rectify people. I'm like, you better put the before the Gambia. So it's like everyone knows I'm from Gambia. Like yesterday I did, a presentation and I always start with, I'm from the Gambia. Yeah. And that's where Jollof is from, in case you guys didn't know. And, we get into that debate, but I do think Gambia is underrated. I think, first of all, when it comes to food, I think we have amazing food. The beaches, as you know, hospitality. I think, everything in Gambia is art and we don't even realize it, right? The art of making attire. You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't do that in this side of the world anyway. Or, when it's Eid, everybody goes and gets things sold, the way tie and dye is created. Yeah. There's so many things about Gambia that I think it's so rich considering how small it is. I also think, we're a lot more communal than I've seen in other African countries. Maybe that's because we're so small. But yeah, I definitely think Gambia is underrated. Gambia.
Yeah, and it's for me as well, because there's a Ghanaian restaurant right outside, because that's kind of been my jollof to get my benachin. Of course, I can't get a benachin all the time, but they have a good jollof rice. But I always just say like, okay, definitely the benachin is way better than their food for sure. Yeah. So, but it I'm not gonna lie, it has been kind of giving me, my African vibe every time I eat it. When I go order my plantains there and stuff, just to get me back. After eating a lot of pastas and exactly and the Swedish meatballs. Yeah. But I want to just to talk about startups, because I've never really been a business person, so I never really heard the term startup like until recently. But I know companies like I think Uber, Airbnb, like some of these companies all started with startups. So like can you help me understand like what sets startup apart from like regular businesses? Like, what's the difference? If you could explain, if my 3-pound brain can understand.
No, I think it's pretty simple, right? I also think in the tech world, sometimes the con is we have a lot of terms that are very, very simple, right? So a startup, a small, medium enterprise can be considered a startup. A startup essentially is just a small idea. Typically, you put your own money into it and then it grows. You get investors involved and then it just keeps growing and growing and growing. Companies like Uber still call themselves, well, they started as startups, but they're technically not now a startup.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why there's been a lot of startups is because of the internet, right? The internet has made it possible to start a company just by going on Delaware, for example, which is an entity in America where you can register a company, get a license and start your business.
Yeah.
And startups tend to move faster than big organizations, hence why they're so popular. Like Klarna in Sweden, that's a startup, right? Revolut, which is an online bank, that's a startup. Revolut gives me more options to move money around different wallets than, let's say, Danske Bank or a Bank of America. So I think that's why people are really attracted to startup. OpenAI, which created ChatGPT, that's a startup. Google started as a startup. The company that I work with started as a startup. So I think startups are really disrupting things and they spot the need faster than most corporations do.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Now, are there any like innovative AI startups that you're excited about right now that you're working on, or whatever, something that you already worked on in Ghana or anywhere?
Yeah. Like, when it comes to artificial intelligence in Africa, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, I do kind of rank it in the work that I do. And the highest ranked is Egypt, followed by South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, and then Ghana. Ghana is only good because it has like a base of a lot of stakeholders. But I think the most interesting solutions that I see really come out of Tunisia and Egypt. So in Egypt, for example, they're using artificial intelligence to be able to predict cancer. They're using artificial intelligence to be able to do radiology. So in the healthcare field, I see a lot of interesting things. And then I was in Nigeria recently and I saw how they're using artificial intelligence to predict credit scoring to see whether they should lend you money to pay more rent. I don't, a lot of people don't know. I don't know how it is in Gambia. But in Ghana and Nigeria, you have to pay your rent 1 to 2 years upfront with cash.
Okay.
So now some startups are figuring out ways that they can show that you are trustworthy and pay your rent in 3 months instead. And they're doing these checks using artificial intelligence.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I mean, in Gambia, do you see AI going there right now? Like, because, there's a lot of negative talks, of course, always in Gambia, but I'm always hoping for something to kind of show up and kind of help Gambia move forward. Do you have any idea for Gambia or something that can help move the country forward with whatever is the medical part sectors or the farming or anything that we could use? Like you said, we're so rich in a lot of things. Like, do you think maybe AI could help us or anything else that could help us?
When it comes to Gambia and AI, I would say that I've never really thought about, okay, let me connect the dots, right? Like I said, I think when I go to Gambia, I turn off my working brain. I've never, which is probably a shame. I've never gone to Gambia and be like, okay, what startups can I work with? Or I understand the terrain. I've attended a few events, but I haven't thought about it. I do think what is interesting that's applicable in Gambia is not necessarily within AI, but more so blockchain technology, right? So how can you use blockchain to put land deeds on the blockchain?
Okay.
As you know, everybody in Gambia knows somebody who's bought land and then they found out that they don't even own that land anymore.
Yeah.
So how can you use technology to make that more transparent? I know that those models are being used in other African countries, and I think that would be helpful in Gambia. But the problem is sometimes when it comes to technology across the world, not just even Africa, a lot of people in power fight back because it brings transparency. And people don't always want to be transparent because it means that they can't, do dubious behavior.
That's the thing with human beings. I guess that's why artificial intelligence can be very important to to kind of make us better. I don't know whether to make us better or whether just to, to peel the, whatever they call it, just to, to peel the orange or the iron. I mean, this is the, what is it called? The onion or something? I don't know. Yeah. But are they do you usually are you staying up to to date with the latest developments of AI and the machine learning? Yeah. 100%. Can you tell me a little bit about some new tech or new AI developments right now?
Yeah. I mean, as you know, ChatGPT is all the rage, right? Everyone's talking about ChatGPT, which is great. And what ChatGPT essentially does is generative AI, right? So it's able to use large data sets and make sense of it. So right now, a lot of people are talking about generative AI. So how can two different data points communicate and create something? So that's something that I'm super interested about. In Africa, for example, there's a company. It started by a Nigerian guy who's based in Ghana, actually, and it's called, I think, Chat Bible, and he has Chat Quran that he's currently developing. So you literally tell the machine, I feel like I'm in despair. Okay. And then it gives you a verse from the Bible that's oh, in despair, do this, or I'm feeling a little bit anxious, and then it'll give you a Bible verse that talks about anxiety. And he's doing the same for the Quran. So I find work like that interesting, right? How can you take AI and have it affect people's day in, day out lives? And when it comes to the company that I work with, 84% of the AI tools that are out in the world, we power. Even ChatGPT. So you get to see what's happening on the ground all the time. Okay.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I've been using ChatGPT for the last month. I got my wife to start using it.
So what do you use it for? What are some of the prompts that you put in?
I guess, I'm one of those people that I'm very curious, and I really want to gain as much knowledge as possible. I do think it is good to learn, ask some questions. I do ask certain questions or to make it I guess I'm still trying to understand the capabilities of ChatGPT, what it can do. Because before, I would ask something in Google and it would just give me a very basic answer that I'll probably ignore it. But here it's almost like I can have a conversation on exactly what I need and how I feel about what he said or what she said, I don't know, or what it said. And so, but mainly I've just kind of been using it for history learning, you know what I mean? Because I have a lot of questions about history and a lot of things. Sometimes I do Islamic, questions and answers and just kind of know. I even use it for just to understand artificial intelligence itself, just to ask what AI is all about and all these things. But what scares me more is some people, of course, will use it to cheat. And when I mean cheat, as in if you're going to go there and so it can write everything, and I remember I used it. I had a homework for a Swedish homework that I had to do. Yeah, my teacher is probably going to catch me saying this if he ever listens to the podcast. And it literally does exactly what I need. You know what I mean? It will write me exactly what I want. But at the same time, it made me feel guilty. It made me feel okay, this is not right. Because how am I really going to learn if this is helping me throughout? And I know a lot of people are going to use that, and that's one of the part that scares me. And another question I have for you, do you think artificial intelligence will ever be sentient?
So I think, I'll take the first one, right? So last week, a lot of my work was engaging university students. Because the thing is, when it comes to artificial intelligence, if you can get university students to already think about it now, by the time they get into the workforce, they'll be good to go. I spoke to at least more than 500 students last week. And the first thing I'd ask them is, how many people have used ChatGPT? Everybody's hands went up.
Yeah.
Right? And it's it just means that the teachers need to start thinking more critically or come up with more innovative ways of asking people how to think.
Yeah.
Because it goes to show you that critical thinking, as we know it, has changed. I'm sure whenever the calculator was invented, people thought using the calculator is cheating.
Sure.
But if you give a really, really difficult and complex and structured question, a calculator assists you, but it doesn't help you answer the question. Right? So if your homework is always super, super complex and multi-layered, ChatGPT can't help you answer the question. It can help you assist with it. Some exams are open book. You can literally take a book with you to the exam, but if you still don't know how to apply the knowledge to answer the question, you essentially can't go away with it. And I think to the second point, with like with artificial intelligence ever be sentient? I don't know. I think, time will tell. I do think no. I do
Scary.
think I think it's normal to have this it makes great news articles and headlines. Social media taking over the world. Everybody's depressed because of social media. And I think it will be the same with AI. Like, Google AI there was a lot of buzz around it being sentient, but like I said, the human has more control over the tool rather than the tool itself. Guns are used by human beings. Guns don't work themselves. It's humans, right?
I understand, but guns are not smart. Guns are not intelligent. And the thing you said with the teachers using more or smarter ways to create, these schoolworks or whatever. Because I'm like, it will get smarter, of course. Like OpenAI will create more versions. So if it gets smarter and smarter, because I look at AI in a way like this, because as a human, we don't really understand our consciousness. So we don't know how it works. Almost like a small child, we don't know how the development of the child and the brain of a child, how it kind of, the consciousness, the soul or whatever. And a child kind of learns, every day, it learns recognizing colors, patterns, language, words, putting words together. And when I think about it, it almost looks like that is kind of learning. And of course, as a Muslim, I would say, if I think about another being would be sentient to a point where it's almost like a God's creation, it scares me, what I mean? Because I think about Allah, that Allah can only create. That we can create something that has feelings or whatever. But if they study like animal behaviors, how bugs and how ants work and how all these things and put all these patterns together, like what is stopping them, of course, because you can't really stop the progress. It's going to keep going. So it's like, will it get to a point where it's really going to become very intelligent to a point where how much control are we going to have over it? You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the part that kind of just scares me a lot. And of course, like you said, big media news, like people like to talk about those things. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I like listening to kind of those things, and it's just fun. You know what I mean? And it gets scary. I don't know.
No, like I said, I genuinely think, any technology is a double-edged sword. It can slice bread or it can punch someone's heart. It's essentially how it's used.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a lot of research around AI ethics, which is not really my terrain. But I know these are a lot of questions that researchers have. Yeah. And they're completely valid. But I know from what I do encourage people to think about when it comes to AI is what can it do and what has it done. I think a lot of us interact with artificial intelligence without realizing it. Sure. When you open Netflix and you watch, reality show and the next day it gives you 3 options, that's powered by artificial intelligence, When you go on Amazon and you buy, a bottle and the next time it's telling you, oh, you should buy a straw with that, that's artificial intelligence. When you're using Uber, AI. TikTok algorithms, AI. So there are other ways, there are more positive use cases for AI than there are negative use cases for AI. And there's always going to be negative use cases. I don't think that will ever cease. Yeah.
And do you think it will have an impact on our relationship, as a human relationship? Because nowadays, of course, we can communicate anywhere, but there's this idea of they'll be everywhere to a point where even the human connection almost will be lost. Do you think that's possible? I mean, we're already kind of seeing that a little bit, with our phones and everything, but I'm hoping for it to be able to use in a very proper way, just to make sure that it's being used for something that could really assist us, you know what I mean? That could really help us figure out some things, instead of some idiot who thinks that is just cool to deep fakes and I, by the way, I saw this Nvidia what is it called? Some eye thing. It was like a I don't remember what it's called.
So if I'm looking like this, it'll make your
oh
face
my
look like
God.
This,
And remember, I made a video a long time ago when I was a little bit young, and I was trying to do preaching videos online. But I would write stuff, but I would need to read it and pretend pretend like I'm looking at this, like I'm pretending I'm going to look at the camera, you know. And my mom told me, yeah, but you know, you're reading it, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm reading it. And the whole point was I was trying to show that I was not reading it, like it was coming from my head. And I'm like, well, this is a way for people to now, you don't have to even look at the camera. You can literally hold your phone and do it. And it's amazing. It's amazing. It's just, you know, it's just people, some idiots out there are probably going to use it for their own, you know, trickery or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah.
100%. 100%. You know, and kind of going back to your question on whether AI will impact our relationships, I don't think I have like a solid answer around that, but I do know social media, for example, has impacted the way we relate to human beings, right? So it'll be interesting to see how AI will do that. I think, you know, I would hate for people to, ChatGPT, answer this question, help me relay something to a loved one. It could be, like I said again, it can be used for good and it can be used for bad, but only time will tell. But I know that, you know, the way social media has affected how we relate to one another, it's something that I am very conscious of. Like I haven't been on Instagram now for about 3 years.
I quit.
Right? Yeah. I haven't been on it for 3 years, and I think it's changed the way that I relate to people. I'm a lot more intentional. I have to actually reach out and have a phone conversation.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it was, you know, you feel like you've caught up with everybody because you see what they're doing on their stories and X, Y, and Z. So yeah, I know from the social media angle, but from the AI angle, nothing really comes to mind as of yet.
Yeah. Now, like, what's your goal, Fatima, like for the future? Like, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to, you know, what are you trying to do basically? Like, how do you want to change the world? You know what I mean? In your, like, what kind of world would you want to have? You know?
I mean, there's two ways, right? There's a way to answer it personally and there's a way to answer it professionally, right? And you said something before and I was smiling in my head. You said my mother is something, right? So I love Auntie Ramon. I think everybody knows this. Like when I come to Gambia, sometimes I stay there as much as I stay at home. Like I'm always at Jalokunda. And I really enjoy your mom. Like I really, really enjoy her. And I think I always Jomal her for the non-Gambian speakers. I don't know how to translate Jomal, but I think, you know, raising human beings is, I think that in itself is work, right? And I think that in itself is a way that you change the world. And I also think there's a level of equanimity that I want to like reach. And when I think of peace in a bottle, I think of your mom. Like your mom is always cool. She's always calm. She's always collected. You know, she's always making her banana bread. That's what I aspire to. Honestly, like, you know, I really, like I said, I really just enjoy being around your mom. So I really aspire to that. I think sometimes we're so busy and we're busy for nothing.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I see myself like running around. I'm so busy. And then I'm like, okay, this time next year, whatever I'm running around doing, is it going to matter? And if it's not, then what's the point, right? So I really want to leave a legacy. And when it comes to the work that I do, I really want to empower people. If I'm the only one eating at the table, what's the point in doing it? So a lot of my friends will call me the plug or the connector. If there's something that I see that can benefit anyone, I will do it. I remember when I was 16, I was working at a call center in the UK, right? I was the first person to work out of my friends. Before we knew it, believe it or not, there were 6 of us working in that call center.
All because
so that's how I am. So if I'm in somewhere, I'm pulling everyone in because I've also been pulled up by people, right? So I'm literally just giving back what's been given to me. So I think that's really what drives me. And I think in the work that I do, I get to do it with hundreds and thousands of people. So yeah, that's what makes me happy.
That's nice. And in that, do you understand, or should I say, what is the, what do you think the purpose or the meaning of life is to you? Is it what you just said now, or is it something bigger than that? I know it's a very deep question.
No, it is a deep question. And I genuinely think, like, you know, there's so many ways to look at it, right? But the first thing that comes to my mind is whatever I have is not mine. It's just passed through me to be passed through someone else, right? Because if you have everything and you can't share it, then what's the point in having it?
Yeah.
You know, I think if I was 25, I would have thought that, you know, working at Fortune 500, like everything I wanted when I was like, let's say 21 or 25, I've been able to achieve it in the later stage of my 20s.
Yeah.
And that's not what has given me fulfillment.
Yeah.
I've gotten the most fulfillment from, it sounds really corny, but from spending time with my family,
it's not corny.
Nature. No, it's not, but a lot of people do think it's cliche to hear these answers that, yeah, at the end of the day, these things don't give you fulfillment. It's the things that are for free and so forth. But when I really think about fulfillment, I think that's where it really boils down to, right? And being able to understand what is, Allah's purpose for you and how can you activate that? Because work is worship. There's so many ways to worship, right? And how are you doing that? How do you have that in the back of your mind? But I definitely know that I like working with people. So in as much as AI is great, I like working with people to teach them what they can do with AI.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, that's like you said, like with family, like for me, that has been something that's my main thing. Like when I'm out all day working, the first thing I think about is going home to be with my family. Being here right now, being far away from my family, I feel that because back when I was in Gambia, I used to party a lot, and I didn't really like spend that much time. Even growing up when I was very young, like because I grew up in Senegal, so I wasn't really around my family a lot, so I didn't even know how I was related to a lot of different people, because the family is so big. So I didn't really understand the meaning of family because I grew up around other people. But that's one of the most important things that you can do, be good to your family, spend time with them, and and it's good to have friends and do all those things. But it's important. Like you said, work is worship. Like in our religion, like Islam doesn't like lazy people. Islam doesn't like that. You have to work hard. You have to, even people that sit maybe and do like prayer all the time, asking God for things. God doesn't just give it to you if you don't work hard if you don't work hard. You have to put in the work, whatever it is, whatever that you do, you have to work hard and then pray, because prayer is actually the only thing that can, even if your destiny is just praying, is the only thing that can change predestined. That's the only thing in our religion that can come between that. And understanding the purpose of what, like you said, why God, the purpose or what he wants from us. But, that one I think is just pretty clear. I think I talked about it when I talked with Saini, like, we're here for a purpose, obviously, because every product has a purpose and has a meaning. You know what I mean? And God gave us a book and told us this is like the manual guide. And if you follow this, you will know what your purpose is. And with all those things, it includes like working. It includes being grateful. It includes being courageous. It includes your relationship between you and God, and how to have an etiquette, how to like all these things, and the way you said how my mom is, and I look up to her, and when I see how she is, and I'm just like, she's so peaceful, you know what I mean? And that's what we kind of hope for. Yeah But it's really been good catching up with you.
Yeah, likewise. I think this has been a good opportunity. I think when it comes to your siblings, I know the girls more, so Aja, I love Aja. She's just like, pachar. She's like a kani pachar, which for those of you aren't here, like, Tabasco sauce. And yeah, so, it's nice to catch up. Like you said, it's a big family. So there's so many of us in the orbit, and a lot of us are getting to know each other again as adults, which I think is really exciting. I think it's one thing seeing your cousins when you're younger and you're kind of like not forced to see them, but you're in the same space. You don't really you don't make the effort to really know who they are. But when you grow older, you're like, oh, wait a minute, actually, that person is really cool. And I think that's the beauty, I guess, of having a lot of cousins.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Like the family is so big. It's so big. And it's hard to connect with everybody. And for me, at least, I'm trying as hard to connect with a lot of as much as I can, and really get to know, because our parents did that,
Yes.
And now we have it in a more easy way. Like we can communicate like this, we can on the phone and everything. So I think we should really try and do that, and yeah, I'm going to be going to Gambia soon. Are you planning going there soon?
I heard. Jimmy said you were going in
Yeah,
April?
April 15. Yeah. Yeah.
It's either this Eid or the bigger Eid. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to go for.
Yeah, I hope we see each other soon. If not, I really want to come to Ghana because Jibi's told me a lot about Ghana, and the way I see it, and the way I see your TikTok, it looks really, really cool, you know? And
it is. It is. It's an interesting place. Like, it has its pros and its cons, right? I think a lot of people right now, economically, the country is going through a lot of pain. Like, there's a lot of depreciation. So with TikTok as well, I took a step back and I wasn't doing as many TikToks because I realized that I was only showing one side of the country and there's a completely other side of the country. And as a diasporian, you're going to have a different experience that doesn't necessarily reflect the real experience. It's like living in Gambia and living in Senegambia and just showing that side of the country, you know. So you have to be very mindful with that as well. But there's always space for you when you come here, you know, let me know. And whenever I'm in Denmark, I'll definitely pass by Sweden. I'm typically only in Malmö, but
do that. I met Buya actually. I met Buya one time. Because me and my wife, we drove to Malmö and she came over. We had breakfast. It was really nice. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. But we will keep in touch and
there's another cousin of ours in Gambia as well. In how do you call it? In Sweden. So I'll hook you up in case you don't know her.
Okay, do that. Do that. And what was I going to say? We definitely have to do this again.
Yes.
You know, and one thing is this Zoom thing is nice to do because you know, since I started the podcast, I've been trying to meet people because you know, there's just this feeling of meeting the person in life and then having that connection. You know what I mean? So hopefully the next time we meet, we'll do this again and we'll catch up and we can talk more about some AI stuff.
Exactly. Or LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I love talking about LinkedIn.
The thing is, I don't really have a lot of knowledge on like how it works and how you can actually use it, but maybe if we do it again, we'll talk about it more, and you can teach me. Maybe by then I'll try to do some research as well or something, and have a little bit more knowledge about it. Yeah,
it's as easy as setting up an Instagram page or a Twitter. I kid you not, right? And you'd be surprised about the opportunities. Like a lot of people, I got this job via LinkedIn. The one that I'm at currently. And I think a lot of things happen on that side of the world. So I do encourage you to, you know, take your time, just scroll through. You don't necessarily have to finish your profile. It doesn't need to be 100%, but just be on it and type your interest and you'll see that on your feed.
Definitely. I'm going to do that. I'll do it because I already have an account. So I'll get into it. Yeah.
Boubacar, thank you so much for your time. And like I said, I'm so sorry that, you know, I missed our 2 other schedules, but I'm really happy that this happened. It was a great way to, you know, learn about what you're doing as well and catch up. And my regards to the baby and Emma.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. I'm really glad to have you.
All right.
All right. Take care. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
All right. You too. Bye.
All right.